Imagine doctors in ancient Egypt prescribing herbal remedies, observing their patients closely, and perhaps even comparing one treatment against another. That, believe it or not, is clinical trials. Centuries, even millennia, before we ever heard of aspirin, penicillin, or double-blind studies. We often think of clinical trials as a hallmark of modern medicine, those rigorous scientific tests that ensure our drugs and treatments are safe and effective. But the very idea of systematically testing remedies, of comparing outcomes, of seeking evidence beyond mere tradition, that's not a modern invention. It's an ancient human impulse, woven into the fabric of our earliest attempts to heal. Today, we're going on a journey to uncover the unexpected origin story of evidence-based medicine, stretching back to a time when myth and method began their slow, fascinating dance. Our story begins in the cradle of civilization. In ancient Egypt, the Ebers Papyrus, dating back to 1550 BC, lists hundreds of remedies. While many seem rudimentary today, what's striking is the detailed observation. Physicians recorded dosages, noted effects, and often prescribed different treatments for similar ailments. Was this truly controlled observation? Perhaps not in our modern sense, but it shows a pragmatic approach, a trial-and-error system recorded for posterity. Moving further east, we find similar patterns in Mesopotamia. Detailed records of symptoms and prescribed treatments, hinting at an empirical approach. They weren't just guessing, they were refining, iterating, and accumulating knowledge about what seemed to work. These seemingly unscientific historical practices formed the earliest crude foundations of evidence-based medicine, driven by the desperate need to alleviate suffering and preserve life. Let's fast forward slightly and turn to some perhaps unexpected sources. Consider the biblical book of Daniel. When Daniel and his companions are brought before King Nebuchadnezzar, they're ordered to eat the king's rich food and wine. Daniel proposes an alternative, a simple diet of vegetables and water for 10 days. After 10 days, they were judged to look healthier and better nourished than those who ate the king's food. This isn't a modern trial, but it's a clear, deliberate comparison of two interventions with an observed outcome. A simple yet powerful dietary experiment. Then, in ancient Greece, Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, advocated for meticulous observation. His writings emphasized recording symptoms, diet, and environmental factors. While he didn't conduct trials, his emphasis on empirical observation, looking at what actually happens, was a monumental shift. The philosophical emphasis of Greek thought, valuing logic and classification, indirectly paved the way for systematic testing. It distinguished medicine from mere superstition, pushing it beyond folklore towards deliberate, though rudimentary, attempts to understand and compare treatments. Our journey isn't confined to the West. Along the ancient trade routes of the Silk Road, science was also blossoming. In ancient China, meticulous pharmacological testing was underway. The Shennong Ben Chao Jing, attributed to the mythical Emperor Shennong, is one of the earliest texts on herbal medicine, describing hundreds of medicinal substances, their properties, and effects. This wasn't just folklore, it was a systematic classification based on observation, even taste tests. Similarly, in India, Ayurvedic medicine developed sophisticated systems for classifying herbs, their doshas, and their observed effects on patients. Texts like the Charaka Samhita detail diagnostic methods and therapeutic principles, showing a long tradition of careful documentation and empirical insight. This cross-cultural exchange, often through the movement of goods and ideas along these vast trade networks, subtly advanced experimental approaches globally. Knowledge gained in one corner of the world would gradually influence practices in another, showing that the pursuit of effective medicine was a shared human endeavor, transcending geographical and cultural boundaries. This era shows us how the deliberate testing of remedies was not a unique European phenomenon, but a global one, with each culture contributing its own unique methodology and record-keeping to the collective human knowledge of healing. As we move into the Islamic Golden Age, we see a crucial bridge being built. Scholars like Raziz al-Razi in the 9th century and Avicenna, Ibn Sina in the 10th and 11th centuries made groundbreaking contributions. Rhazes, for instance, is famously credited with what might be one of the earliest quasi-controlled trials. To compare treatments for meningitis, he reportedly observed patients in one ward receiving one treatment, while those in another ward received a different one, noting their outcomes. Avicenna's Canon of Medicine laid out principles for testing drugs, including the idea that a drug's effect should be consistent and that adverse reactions should be noted. This was a significant step towards increasing sophistication in medicinal properties and patient observation. In medieval Europe, the reemergence of systematic inquiry in early universities slowly began to challenge purely anecdotal medicine. The slow, arduous shift from unquestioning acceptance of traditional remedies to a nascent desire for proof began to take root, a glimmer of skepticism that would eventually ignite the scientific revolution. This period demonstrates the crucial link between ancient empirical thought and the eventual rise of modern scientific methods, proving that the foundation of our modern medical practices was laid brick by brick over centuries in disparate parts of the world. The true dawn of modern clinical trials is often attributed to a Scottish naval surgeon named James Lind in the mid-18th century. Scurvy was decimating sailors on long voyages. In 1747, on HMS Salisbury, Lind conducted what is widely considered the first controlled clinical trial. He took 12 sailors, all suffering from scurvy, and divided them into 6 pairs. Each pair received a different supplement in addition to their basic diet: cider, sulfuric acid, vinegar, seawater, oranges and lemons, or barley water. The result? The pair who received oranges and lemons recovered remarkably quickly. This wasn't just observation. It was a deliberate, controlled comparison with a clear outcome, laying the blueprint for future medical research. Lind's work coincided with the developing mathematical tools of the Enlightenment. The rise of statistics, though rudimentary at first, would eventually make trials truly rigorous, allowing researchers to analyze data and draw statistically significant conclusions. The pieces were finally coming together. So the next time you hear about a new drug or vaccine that has successfully passed its clinical trials, remember this long, winding road. Remember the Egyptian physicians, the biblical observers, the Greek philosophers, the Chinese herbalists, the Indian healers, the Islamic scholars, and the pioneering naval surgeons. Today's sophisticated trials are not a sudden invention. They are the culmination of millennia of human curiosity, systematic inquiry, and an enduring desire to alleviate suffering and improve health. From myth to method, from ancient wisdom to modern miracles, the story of clinical trials is truly an unexpected origin story.